Hello. So today I'd like to offer you a little quick introduction. I don't know how quick it's going to be, but I'll be as quick as I can to kind of go over the basics of WordPress. I use WordPress to make websites with people. So I work with people who want to make their own website, but they just want to get a little bit of help and support so that it goes smoothly and they end up with something that works really well, looks really great, and that represents their brand, their company online. So thing one about WordPress is that there are two kinds of WordPress, WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So WordPress.org is the self-hosted one, and that's what we're going to be going through today. The .com one is hosted by WordPress. So WordPress offer you, basically you can make a completely free website with WordPress, but if you want to look like you're taking your website seriously, you'll have to upgrade to use your own domain name instead of having like clairecreative.com, clairecreative.wordpress.com. So WordPress will be in your domain name unless you pay. You'll have ads on your site unless you pay to have those removed. And you don't really have as much control over your website as you would with a self-hosted website. So .org is the self-hosted one, which means you have to buy hosting and have a domain name hooked up to it in order to install WordPress as a kind of an app. The official term is a content management system because it allows you to make websites and web pages without getting into code. So let's look a little bit, first of all, about hosting. So I hope that's pretty clear. So WordPress.com is when you're attached to the WordPress mothership and you don't have access to the files and the source and the kind of nitty-gritty of your site. .org is when you're using WordPress as like a piece of software almost. So I have a list of things to talk to you about in terms of choosing a host. Now, I get asked a lot what hosting company people often ask me what hosting company they should subscribe to and sign up with. But it's not really a black and white question because there's a lot of defining factors. The first being your location. So a couple of years ago, Google decided that it will show people in the search results, you will show up more quickly if the server hosting your website is in the same geographic location as the people searching. So I'm in France, I use a French host. So people searching in France will see me, a web consultant, digital strategist, before people are further afield, like in the States. You know, there's about 200 different factors involved, but that location is one of them. So, and there's two reasons why you look at location for choosing your host. It's the Google thing in that it'll show people, show you in search results to people in the same geographic location, but also support. So say you have a question for your hosting company, like how you need to do something, help with setting up email or something. If your host is in the same geographic location, they'll be on the same business hours as you. So you can ring them up within business hours. That's something that's actually quite useful if you are doing everything from scratch. And that brings us on to the next point, which is support. So if the hosting company that you sign up with offers zero support, that might leave you in the lurch. If you can't get them on the phone, you might really be tearing your hair out trying to figure something out and you can't get anybody to help you. Now, if you're working with a developer or a development team, that possibly won't be an issue because they'll know some of the stuff. But if you're doing it all by yourself or within your in-house team where you're all kind of figuring it out as you go along, it's nice to be able to call your hosting company up on the phone. And don't hesitate to do so because you're paying them. That's what they're there for. And if they don't have a direct answer for you, they'll probably be able to send you some information or a tutorial on how to do the thing that you want to do. Obviously, one of the aspects is going to be cost because it has to enter into your budget for your project as a whole. So when you're factoring in cost, most hosting companies these days, when you sign up for a new account, will offer you a free domain for at least a year. So that's kind of almost all hosting companies do that. I mean, I haven't seen one recently that doesn't do that. So when you're thinking about registering a domain and getting hosting, it's great to do it all together. One, the domain might be free for a year, and two, it means they're already hooked up and you don't have to do any kind of DNS settings, which is really quite technical to get into. But it's something, if your hosting company offers good support, they'll be able to help you with that. So I'm not going to dwell too much about hosting and domain, but I just want to, because it's kind of annoying stuff at the very beginning, hosting and domain setup. But you'll only have to do it that one time to get it set up, and then you'll be dealing with the WordPress platform and not your hosting interface. So another thing that you'd like is important to consider when you're choosing a host. Okay, we talked about location, support, cost. If you're using WordPress, which obviously this is why you're watching this tutorial, you have to have Linux hosting. So it's Linux hosting. You don't need to know any of the other options. You don't even really need to know what that means. But WordPress is compatible with Linux. There are other options like Windows hosting, but we want WordPress, we want Linux. So there's Linux, Linux. Another fantastic thing to have with your hosting company, and it can be a deciding factor, is whether they have a one-click install for WordPress. They don't have to have a one-click install, but doing it the manual way means you have to get into file transfer protocols, FTP, you have to get into databases and all that kind of stuff, which you really don't need to learn because you do it one time and one time only. So if they have a one-click install, it means that you can log in to your hosting account. So it's like you've got, as soon as you sign up, you've got an account with a control panel dashboard thing. And it's often called control panel. Within your control panel, you'll have like applications or installations. A lot of hosting companies use different terminology. And one of the options will be one-click install for WordPress. And there'll probably be a bunch of other options in there as well. But look for the little WordPress logo and do a one-click install. So that means within, okay, you've bought your hosting and your domain is hooked up to it. You've got your login to the hosting account. You've found your one-click install. You go click. You choose a good username and password. We'll talk about that in a second. And within a couple of minutes, you've got a WordPress website. And all you need to do then is add content and design it. Well, it sounds like you've nothing left to do, but you've got your foundation there within a couple of minutes. The last thing I'll say about hosting and domain is when you're signing up for all that stuff, be careful of their sales pitches because, okay, obviously the cheapest option isn't always the best option. Actually, it very rarely is the best option. You really want to go with a host that has a good reputation. So if they try and sell you a maintained website or a ready-made service or all these kind of other bells and whistles, just kind of maybe take a step back, do a bit of research, and don't always just say yes because they say it's the best thing to have. One thing they might try and sell you is an SSL certificate, and I highly recommend getting an SSL certificate. So SSL certificate is basically a certificate that tells search engines like Google and the rest of them that your site is secure. So it's a little certificate that goes into the root of your site, and it changes the domain from HTTP : to HTTPS, S for secure, : and then your www. So that's an SSL certificate. And when you're doing all your purchasing at the same time, domain, hosting, and SSL certificate, your host will probably be able to just help you figure that out and put it all together. So you don't have to pay a developer or like tear your hair out trying to get somebody to do it for you, or with forums and things like that. Get it all done with the initial setup. You'll pay for it. Costs vary massively, but if you have a good host, you'll be able to put those things all together and get it all set up, and then you won't have to deal with that stuff again unless you're renewing or changing. So when you've set that stuff up, sometimes it can take up to 72 hours to propagate, which means like hook up, but that's completely out of your control. And it's not even the host that's doing it, it's the internet that has to catch up. I don't know what that means, but sometimes it's instantaneous. Sometimes it takes a couple of hours. It can take up to 72 hours. Very rarely takes up like 72 hours, but sometimes that's what happens. The next thing on the list is passwords. So you're setting up a domain, hosting, and you're going to install WordPress with one-click install. So with every single one of those, there are usernames and passwords. There's also a database created for your WordPress website and an FTP login. So the database FTP login, you might not need them right away, but it's good to have them in case something ever goes wrong with your website and you need to get a developer involved. So get those. Make sure your WordPress password is annoyingly long and complicated so that robots that go across the web looking to vandalize and hack websites can't guess it easily. And the one thing I will say is to really save your passwords somewhere where you'll be able to access them again. Not scribble down on the back of an envelope, which sometimes just happens because you're working quickly, but save them in like a file on your computer or somewhere else safe. There's an application also that you can add to your computer called LastPass, which securely backs up all your passwords. So please save your passwords, because it's not as easy as I forgot my password, reset, when your site is up and running and you need to get into your database or your FTP. Get your passwords, keep them in a digital file. I'll say no more about it. So passwords, your installation of WordPress, next up. So you've bought you've subscribed to all your domain hosting, and you've gotten into your control panel because you've got your password saved and it's easy to get in. You've gone into your control panel, you've found one-click install, you've installed WordPress, you've got your password and username for that. Complicated passwords, not using admin as your username, as it will possibly do by default. So now you've got actually a WordPress installation, like a nudie, brand new, fresh, defaulty, dummy content WordPress website. So from that point on, you're adding content and working on design. So before you really get into making pages, there are a few things that I recommend you do, and we won't go on too much longer after that. One, go to your settings. I'll actually share my screen and I'll show you what that means. So I've got share screen. Okay. So I've got, this is a default WordPress installation, and the theme is the 2017 theme. Every year WordPress releases a new design that you can use for free. The free ones are fine, but you will run into, limitations. So this is the dashboard, and there's a bunch of stuff down along the side here that you need to know, but we might not look at all of them today. So home means your dashboard. There's a big blue button here that says customize your site. Don't go mad with that just yet, because that's talking about design, and the design is controlled by your WordPress theme. We'll go into detail about in a second. So don't go mad about customizing your site before you've actually decided on a theme and started putting your real pages together, because when you change your theme, things will all move around and it's going to be a pain in the bum. So first of all, I'll run through this side menu quickly. Posts, blog posts, articles. It's content that you add regularly. It can be categorized so you can put different posts on different pages. But posts, it's all about blogging. Media, so that's your library of images, audio files, videos, PDFs, anything that you upload to your website will be saved in your media library. Now, some people don't realize that, and every time they want to use a certain image, they'll upload it again. That's it's just going to take up space in your media library and ultimately clog up your hosting. When you upload something, it'll be in your library and you can use it again and again. Pages are your permanent content, like homepage, contact page, about, your blog index page, which contains the blog posts. This is a story for another day. And they're the pages that you'll set up and might be tweaked over time, but you won't be adding thousands of pages. You might be adding thousands of blog posts, not so likely that you'd be adding thousands of pages. Look, I'm saying thousands, but they're permanent, kind of cornerstone branded content. Comments. I deactivate comments by default on every site that I create for the simple fact that, okay, again, WordPress was born out of a blogging platform, and by default, people can leave comments at the bottom of your articles. I believe that interaction now happens on social media way more than it happens on site. So unless you're really focusing on like a forum type website, or somewhere where the conversations are going to be going on your website and not on social media, I'd recommend deactivating comments from the get-go. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. Appearance, so that's where you'll install the theme that you choose, where you'll customize that theme. Widgets, now they're little movable elements of content that go in your footer and your sidebar. I'll probably create another tutorial specifically for that. And menus. Now, it seems weird that appearance has menus in under it, because menus it's all about your navigation. So quite often you'll have a menu at the top of a website to help you navigate around. So instead of just having all the pages appear there by default, you can define your content in a menu. And then header and editor. Don't go into editor. It's your point of access to your code, and you don't want to mess with that if you don't know what you're doing. Now, plugins. Under appearance, you have themes. Themes are all things that refer to the design and more or less the functionality of your website. To some extent, the most of your functionality will happen through your theme. If there's something that your theme doesn't do and you need to add it, you go to plugins and you add a little plugin. So as the name might suggest, it's a little additional piece of functionality that plugs into your core WordPress system and allows you to do different stuff. Like it might affect the visual appearance or some kind of form or sign up application or whatever additional functionality you need. You could probably do it with a plugin, which is why WordPress is so powerful, because it's so widely used. If you need to do something, there's probably a plugin that's already in existence to do it. But with plugins, and I often make the reference of like an extension lead. If you've got like a big extension lead and you can plug 5 extra things in, or 10 or whatever. If you leave that as, you've extra things plugged in all the time, it overheats, it's a bit dodgy, it's not really ideal situation. And it's the same with plugins on your WordPress website. Don't have too many. Only use really good ones that have like, I say 10,000 users, and I'll do another tutorial on plugins actually, because it's very detailed. But basically, plugins add extra functionality. It's got huge potential, but you have to be really careful with them because they have to play nice with all the other elements of your website. The other elements being your WordPress core, your theme, and as well sometimes your content if you've got embedded content. So please be careful with plugins. Users, that's like you, so that you can log into your website, or anybody else who needs to log into your website. So you might work with a graphic designer or a developer or somebody writing content for you. You can add a new user with different roles within that user section. So I'm just going to quickly run through settings and then we wrap it up. So under your settings, you can adjust the title and tagline of your website, which will be visible in Google. You can set your time zone. So I'm in France, I've set it to Paris. There's it's not crazy important to do this, but I like to do it so that, well, like if you're posting a blog post and it's got a timestamp on it, if you've set the wrong time zone, it looks like you're writing blog posts in the middle of the night, and maybe that makes you look like a weirdo. I don't know, but just do it. Just set your time zone and it'll be fine. I have my email address in there. That's the email address I use to recover a password if I need to. And it's where my notifications will appear as I add more functionality and plugins to the website. So writing, it's kind of a weird page and you don't really need to worry about it so much. Reading, so you've got two options for your homepage. You can say, I want my homepage to be full of blog posts. So you choose your latest posts. You can also choose a static page. Now, a static page is just a page that you've designed. And the post page, if you want to have control over how your posts page, so posts being like your blog page with all the articles in it, you could probably not assign a post page because it actually blocks you from doing certain things. So depending on your theme, you can probably embed your blog rather than assigning a post page. So maybe leave that one blank unless you really know what you're doing. Now down here, you've got search engine visibility. So if you're making a website and you're not putting in some kind of landing page while you're working, I would probably say discourage search engines from indexing this site. So robots go across the web all the time. They find websites for Google to list and have the information there. So if you check that box, it says anytime a search engine comes knocking to find out, oh, what's going on in here? You'll say, nope, I don't want you to index me. So you check that box and you won't be indexed in Google. I often don't use it because if you forget to uncheck it, and it is one small checkbox in 1,000 other options, you won't get indexed in Google, which means nobody's going to find you. So just leave it unchecked unless you really don't, unless you're using a landing page. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Oh, sorry, discussions. That's where you deactivate your comments. So allow people to post on new articles. I always say no thanks because I don't want a conversation happening there. And finally, and I almost forgot, this is a really important one, permalinks. So your permalink is the URL. So clairecreative.com / this is a new article. I choose post name. Now do this please before you create any pages, because all these other archive type post URL structures, they look weird, they don't look nice, they're too long, and sometimes you have like an archive and then a page number rather than the post. It's bad for Google if you don't have your keywords in there for your page URL. So that's a basic overview. I'll be creating some extra tutorials and guides for plugins and creating pages and menus and things like that. So stay tuned to the blog and have a little look around in my blog for other advice and helpful tips on making a website and planning it. All right, getting a bit waffly now. I hope you enjoyed it and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.